Okay, so what I want to do is an agadic issue of sorts that appears, several places in Shas, but it comes up in sort of a strange way here. But it's also a bit Shavuos related, so I figured now was a good time to deal with it. I'm not really sure. We can do it. I guess we could do a normal Agadata share next week also, or we could do a pre-Shavuos share. I don't know. It's going to be Erev Shavuos, so we can decide. Or maybe a Kabbalah Torah Agadata. I don't know, something like that. Okay, but what I want to focus on now is the following. Where is my screen? Okay, so the jumping off point in our Gemara is a phrase that appears several times in the Gemara that's quite strange. Okay? And what I want to talk about is the value of learning standing up in Agadah and Halacha. But we'll see where this comes from. So if you look at the first source, the Gemara Menachot and Daf Ayin, so the Gemara is in the middle of a complicated discussion about the Karbana Omer, and it says Eliyitmar Aseifa Itmar. He must have been referring to the latter half of the Mishnah of Im Hishrishu Kodem LaOmer HaOmer Matiran, that if the grain took root before the Omer, so then the Omer has the ability to permit it. My Kodem LaOmer, and what is before the Omer? So Rabbi Yona Omer Kodem Hava'ata Omer, Rabbi Yosi Bar Zavda Omer Kodem Ktirata Omer. So there's a machloket. The Omer does two things. You guys haven't done, right? None of you have done the sixth parak. So in the sixth parak, the Omer permits two things. One is the eating of the new grain, the other is the harvesting of the new grain. And here you have the machlokas, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yona, whether the harvesting of the grain becomes permitted with the bringing of the Omer, just like eating, or with the harvesting of the Omer. So Amar le Rabbi Elazar le Rabbi Yoshia Didare, Lo tetiv akar eich ad mefarshat le lahamatnisin minayin laomer shematir behashrasha. Don't sit on your knees, right? Don't sit down until you explain this Mishnah to me. ... Now that phrase appears, as I said, several places in Shas. So you look in number 2, in the middle of a discussion of the halacha of Hamamalvet Chaverustam. The fact that if you lend money to someone, you can't claim the money back for at least 30 days. So Amar le Shmuel Rav Matna, lo teitiv akarech ad mefarshit la lahashmaitza. Don't sit down until you explain it to me. So what does this mean? Right? What is this bizarre phrase? Don't sit down until you teach me, right? Don't sit on your knees until you teach this. You explain it to me. So the Ritva quotes 2 deo. 3 deo. Lo tetiv akarech. Perush Rabbeinu Tam says, Ki lashon katzaru. Lo teitov ela almod al karech adam mefarshit. So it means don't sit, rather stand until you've explained it. V'karech raglecha, meaning your feet. K'darminan sarach mechase lekarei. V'yesh lefare, second possibility, od lo teshev afilu b'makom shekarech omdin. Another is, don't even sit where you are standing, meaning don't move. V'yesh mefarshim karech milashon karei amita. Klomar b'kisach. Don't sit in your seat. Okay? 3 different versions. Now that doesn't really explain much. He just says, right, it means don't move, or, right, don't even sit down where you are, or something like that. Meaning it seems to be that all of these pshatim simply think that this statement is, I don't know, trying to get across urgency, right? Don't move until you explain it to me. Something like that. And the Aruch LaNer, number 4, says that so whatever it means don't sit down, it means stand up. But he thinks, and this is where we're going to now move, that this is not just a sense of urgency. It's not just don't move. he said the common denominator to all three pshatim, meaning the one thing the Ritva was sure about, was that what it meant was don't sit down, stand up. And therefore he thinks the key to it is standing up. Why standing up? So he says that the key seems to be another Agadic passage, which you have in Megillah on Chaf Aleph. Here. So this is the Gemara that we're about to see people bring. And this one right here, number 8. Okay? Tan Rabbanan. Mimot Moshe v'ad Rabban Gamliel. Lo hayu lemedin Torah ela me'umad. From the time of Moshe Rabbeinu until Rabban Gamliel, whoever learned Torah standing. Mishemet Rabban Gamliel yarad cholil olam. When Rabban Gamliel died, sickness, illness, weakness descended to the world. V'hayu lemedin Torah miushav. And from then on, they learned Torah sitting. V'hainu ditznan. And that's what the Mishnah means when it says, and this is the source right above in 7, that Mishemet Rabban Gamliel hazakein batel kavod Torah umeita Torah prishut. That when Rabban Gamliel died, the honor of the Torah was nullified, was voided, and purity and asceticism maybe, or separateness, died with it. Now the Gemara says, but why would you learn standing up? Okay, and I said, I'm giving this year because next week is Shavuot. Why would you learn standing up? So,
stand up the whole night.
Learn. You'll see there are people who do that, and I will get to those sources.
Really?
Uh-huh. I will. You said it's a joke. Nothing is ever a joke, Joel. Not if you know enough of the Torah. You can always back up even the most ridiculous of ideas. But where does it come from? So he says, Katuv echad omer va'ishav bahar. One pasuk says that Moshe sat on the mountain. Katuv echad omer v'anochi amadti bahar. And in another it says that Moshe stood on the mountain. So which was it? When Moshe Rabbeinu got the Torah, did he stand or did he sit? Amarav, Omeid, Vilomeid. When he learned, he stood up. Yoshev Vishoneh. When he would do Chazara, Shoneh, right? Learn it a second time, he would sit down. Rav Chanina Omer Lo Omeid Velo Yoshev Ela Soches. So there are always two ways, right? How do you resolve a stira? In one place it says he stand, one place he said it sits. So there's two methodological moves. What could you do? You could either say sometimes he stood and sometimes he sit, which is the first opinion. The second opinion is he stood and sit, right? He was sitting and standing. How?
He was squatting.
Thank you. Right? Right? He was something in between. Rabbi Yochanan Omer, Ein yeshiva el lashon akafa. Shneimar v'teishvu b'kodesh yamim rabim. Rava Amar. Now Rava gives. Rabbi Yochanan gives a third answer. He didn't sit there. He just tarried. Fourth day is rachot me'umad v'kashot miushav. The easy learning he stood up for. When it got really hard, he sat down. Okay? It's great Gemara. So what does the Gemara tell you? Gemara tells you that from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu until Rabban Gamliel, people stood. Either they stood for all of their learning, they stood when they learned something new and they sat for review, they stood when they learned easy things, right? So they stood for Parsha, Shirim, and they sat for Iyun Shir, I don't know, right? Something like that. And once Rabban Gamliel came, after Rabban Gamliel, everyone stood down because they were weak. They were weak.
I find this ironic. It's just a quick side point that it's called yeshiva. I mean,
that's exactly what it is.
Right.
Oh, you mean because the ideal is Amida? Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Very good, Joel. Very good.
So good. So now let's parse this Gemara a little bit. Why do you think that people stood in their learning? What seems to be the hint of the Gemara here? Why do they stand? It's more than kavod. Kavod, I think you're right, but more than that. Kavod, why? For what?
For the Torah.
Good. So that's sort of the very simple read. That's the basic, right? Batel kavod Torah. But I think it's hinting at something even more. What aspect of Torah? What is it about the Torah that they stood for? Where the Gemara is saying something slightly deeper than that, a little bit more profound, a little bit more challenging and ambitious. What's it saying? They stood because every act of Limud HaTorah mimics the original Kabbalah HaTorah of Moshe, right? The original learning of Torah of Moshe on Har Sinai, right? And therefore, they derived how you should orient your posture based on how Moshe was sitting or standing when he originally got the Torah from God. So it's not just that it's the honor of the Torah, it's that Chazal imagined that the experience of your regular run-of-the-mill Limud HaTorah is essentially equivalent or partakes in some sense of Kabbalah Torah from God himself, like Moshe. Right? That's what it's saying. Right? Simple. Now, based on this, let's go back. So the Aruch LaNer says that's what this bizarre phrase means. Because the Gemara in Megillah says, "Ayidei sheyarad choli la'olam etchilu lamod Torah miyushav." V'chein mefarish Rava sham stirda pasuk ve'eshev bahar v'anochi amati bahar kashot miyushav rachot milumad ayin sham. Ze efshar kavanit shmuel she'amar l'Rav Matne. That's what this statement means. Hash'ela she'ani shoel mimcha eina bichlal kashot demiyushav el b'chal tuchal lashiv li v'chein tashiv li miyad me'umad. So the Aruch LaNer says what he's saying is, look, the heter to sit down, that's for hard shilas. But this is easy, so don't you sit down until you give me an answer. But what is implicit in the Aruch LaNer? There's something really that should jump out at you it's implicit in the Aruch LaNer. What is he saying? And all you got to do to understand what's weird about the Aruch LaNer is to remember chronology. What's weird about what the Aruch LaNer just said? What's weird about it? Who's he talking to? Shmuel. Does Shmuel live before or after Rabbi Gamliel? After, by a long time. Joel, I saw that. Easy.
No, I wanted someone to answer. I wasn't sure.
Come on, Rabbi Gamliel is of the early Tanaim.
Right, yeah.
Shmuel is an Amora. Right, Rabbi Gamliel. So, what is implicit in the Aruch LaNer? That even after Rabbi Gamliel, there's a value to learning standing up. Right? Right? Meaning he's saying that this statement is relevant to Shmuel, which means that when the Gemara says, according to him, that Rabbi Gamliel, after Rabbi Gamliel, you could sit down, he's not saying you should, he's saying you could. But at some level, apparently, people were still learning standing up, right? That's what he sees hidden in this line. If you look at source 5, the Ben Yehoyada, I quoted him a few weeks ago. Do you remember who he is?
Was he that source you didn't know?
No. That was someone I didn't know, right? That was the Kohelet Moshe, I think, right? Or Vayikra Moshe, is that what something? Quoting the Maram Tiktin. We just lost. Did I just lose Yosef, or did it? Oh no, sorry, you just got pushed down to the screen when Darius came in. Hey, Darius.
I am still here.
So he's the Ben Ish Chai, right? He's the Ben Ish Chai, same person, right? Rav Yosef Chaim of Baghdad. So just to catch Darius up, right? So what we're trying to do is understand a phrase. The Gemara sometimes says when it's asking a question, the Amoraim say to each other, don't sit down until you answer that question. We saw different opinions why you wouldn't sit down, what it means, don't move. But what's clear according to all of them is that it means stand and don't sit. So we said at one level that simply could mean, don't, just answer quickly or something. But the Aruch LaNer tells us that it comes from the Gemara in Megillah that says that that from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu until Rabbi Gamliel, everyone would stand to mimic Moshe Rabbeinu the way he got the Torah at Har Sinai. So either he always stood, or according to Rava, he only stood for easy limud, which, by the way, that should comfort you, that even according to Rava, even Moshe, learning from God, some halacha were easier than others, right? That should give you a little bit of solace that, everyone, ad v'ad b'chlal of Moshe Rabbeinu, have different limudim, have different, skill and different types of limud. But the Aruch LaNer says that that's what this phrase means. That if you're allowed to stand for, you have to stand for easy questions, but you're allowed to sit for hard questions. So that's what they're saying. It's an easy question, just answer. But
so would Moshe be sitting for the crowns on the letters?
I don't know. I don't know what Moshe thought. Trust me, Moshe was smarter than me. I'm sure he found many things to be. Look, this is one way. I'm sure that everything I find easy, he found easy. And I'm sure many things I find hard, he found easy. Anything he found hard, I find hard. Okay? That's, but what's clear, what's implicit in the Aruch LaNer is that if this is happening with Shmuel, that means that there's a halacha l'maisa implication. And I think, as I said, the agadic for it is why would there be a value to standing up during your limud? We're all weak, it's hard. The answer is because we're supposed to recognize that our Talmud Torah isn't just Talmud Torah. In a certain way, it partakes of Kabbalas HaTorah. So now if you look at source 5, the Ben Yehoyada says also, Mefarish, Masha Amar Lo Teide Bakarech, Ramaz Lo Bazeh Dahaishmatita, the Mefarshet Li Ata Hi Chaviva Alai Ketoratan Shar Rishonim, Shayolomdim Halachot Veda Midrash Me'umad. He says that's not what this means. It doesn't mean, it means that your Torah is as meaningful to me, as precious to me, as the Torah which you had to stand for, meaning the Torah of the earlier generations. So don't sit down until you answer it, because your Torah partakes of that earlier generation. Right, Reish Ayin Bet is the Rav Ovadia Bartanura, if ever you wanted to know what that was. Right, Reish Ayin Bet, Rav Ovadia Bartanura. Mishum Dekodem Ayulomdin Bevena Midrash Me'umad. And then he says, he quotes a minig of the Chida, Rav Chaim Yosef David Azulai, who, like the Aruch LaNer, seems to have felt that there was at least some halacha l'maisa implications of this halacha. And he writes, V'hozav ben Yehuda the Katav, Tov yizaker Rabbeinu Chida Zal, shehaya noeg lilmod leil chag HaShavuot. There you go, Joel, the thing that you joked about. But there it is, that's the minig of the Chida, that all of Shavuot night, v'leil Hoshana Rabbah, and all of Shavuot night, Hoshana Rabbah night, halimud hakadosh mit'umad. He learned all night standing. Why? Because I want to distinguish here for you. The Aruch LaNer seems to think that after the time of Rabbi Gamliel, you don't have to stand for learning. But there's some value to standing to learning because you partake of that. The Chida, the Ben Yehoyada, doesn't say that. Right? The Ben Yehoyada, right? Be careful. What does he say? When he says, don't sit down, he's saying your Torah is like their Torah. But that implies what?
Is it a necessity to stand?
No. Punkt verkehrt, the opposite. Your Torah is equivalent to the Torah of those who used to stand, but you don't stand. Right? It's an expression. right? Meaning it's saying, you don't stand because I value your Torah like theirs. It's a throwback. But fundamentally, besides for like certain Torah, certain moments when I super value your Torah, you don't have to stand, right? This is like it's a way of saying, I think your Torah, this particular statement is a throwback to the early generations. But in general, there's no reason to stand. But then he quotes the Chidah. And what does the Chidah seem to be doing agadically or halachically? I don't know what you want to call it. That even if your day-to-day learning is just limud Torah and no longer needs to partake of that quasi-Kabbalah Torah, there are certain types of limudim where the experience of limud does partake of that. And the Chidah's minhag was to manifest that on Shavuos night and Hoshana Rabbah night, which Shavuos makes a lot of sense, right? Because even if you want to say that, look, we're too weak to mimic Har Sinai every night, the Chidah, I think what he's getting at is to say, but if standing while learning is what manifests the fact that we recognize our limud Torah is not just limud, but is in some way partaking of Har Sinai, so then on Shavuot, the way you would manifest that is by standing. I gave you here from the Yosef Dat that he quotes this from the Chidah. And he adds this interesting point over here. He adds a little aspect to it. And he says, first I'll say it outside. If you think that the reason that they used to stand for Talmud Torah was to mimic Har Sinai, so then it might be that just like the Chidah says that it was only on Shavuos he did it, and Hoshana Rabbah, it might be that even originally, not all of our Torah mimics Har Sinai. Some mimics it more than others. So he says, which ones? He says, maybe dafka belimud berabim umishum kavarat Torah. He says, the pasuk says you learn Torah when you lie down. So he says, maybe it wasn't your personal limud, you can sit. But it was learning in public, right? The communal aspect that they stood for, right? So here you have several versions of what exactly it means the Torah partook of Matan Torah. So here the Yosef Dat says maybe it's only communal learning. The Aruch LaNer says before Rabban Gamliel it was a chiyuv to stand for some of your learning. Nowadays there's still a value. And the Chidah and the Ben Yoyada say, maybe not every learning needs to partake of Har Sinai, but there are certain times of the year where the limud is more than just learning. It's an experience. It's a recreation of experience. And then the way you mimic it is by mimicking Moshe Rabbeinu. And then he says, maybe there's another Hamlacha Lamaisa. Because he says, maybe you could say that even Bizman Hazeh, when we Lamaisa don't stand up for our Talmud Torah, there's still some remnant of that idea that the way you're supposed to learn is the way it was at Har Sinai. Right? That's why they would stand with fear and awe and whatever. And he suggests as follows: V'yesh makom lomar she'af al pi shehetiru lilmod miushav mishum chulsha. Even though nowadays you're allowed to sitting down, adayin in lahaseh v'lishka b'limud harabim. Maybe you shouldn't recline when you're learning publicly. She'al zeh lo etiru. There's still some difference between lying down and sitting. And then he quotes from the son of the Balatanya in the Hagdama of the Shulchan Aruch Harav, writes, B'acharov shanim shosif pliot chochma chochmato b'amkud v'kiyut kemo biyoto ben 30 shana shechazar al kol Talmud im kol rishonim v'achronim tet zayin b'amim. This makes me feel very inferior. At certain key moments, so when he turned 30, he finished his 16th Chazara on Shas with all the Rishonim and all the Achronim. I know, right? Halavai, right? Meaning I'm for my 30th birthday, I made a Siyum Hashas. It was not with all the Rishonim, and some of the Masech that I learned Be'iyun, but 16 times all of Shas Be'iyun by 30. That has passed me by. Sheesh. Unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, I do have a friend who learned Shas once a year since he's 16. So I guess he'll almost be there. But I mean, no, I don't think so. I should check with him. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. Knowing him, it's not impossible. 7.5. Right? If the Daf Yomi cycle takes 7.5 years, you want to do it in 1 year, just divide it by 7.5. Anyways. So he says, Kasher Shamanu Bekadosh, Bioto Bekila Kadosha Maliv, She'etzel Nahar Din Danistor. I definitely mispronounced those Russian cities. Don't hold me to that. Chazar al Kol al Talmud Pam Ha Sheshesrei Be'amida Laila V'yom. And he said he used to do it all standing. V'lo pasuk pume migirsa kasher ene hakol ra'u. And he forgot nothing. And it was as clear as the day that it was given. And what do you see that the son of Balatanya is saying? Right? He sort of slips it in there. My father used to learn everything standing up, and his Torah was as clear as the day it was given. Meaning, there's something about that choosing to experience that. In that way, there's something that it adds. I summarized this many years ago, so I'll say it outside. The Toafot Re'im, which is a parish on the Ureim of Relazar of Metz, seems to also seem there's a certain value to it. I'll read you my summary. Right, the Toafot Re'im, a commentary on the Re'im, explaining why there was no problem for a king to stand during Hakel, even though he's not obligated to, relates to this Gemara. He wonders why standing here would not qualify as a hedya based on Yerushalmi's position that anyone who does something he's exempt from is a hedya. Right, so basically, he's dealing with the following halacha. The Re'im says you're allowed to stand. Right, he's commenting on the halacha. A king can stand during Hakel, but he doesn't have to. The problem is the Yerushalmi says that anyone who does something which he's not chayiv to do is nikra hedyot. What is a hedyot? An idiot. Thank you. Thank you, Yosef. That's what it is. It's the same word. Hedyot is idiot. So he quotes the Vilna Gaon, who says that that's only if you take on a chumrah that's meaningless. But if you do a chumrah which are fundamentally valuable, which you're not chayiv in, so then it's not a hedyot. So like if a woman does a mitzvah to say shezman grama, it's not a hedyot, right? We all know women tend to go out of their way to hear the shofar blowing, even though they're not chayavot, because it's clearly a mitzvah, it's clearly meaningful. So he says, therefore, standing, because the Gemara in Megillah says that they used to stand for Talmud Torah, that shows you it's meaningful. And therefore, it's not, if the king wants to stand, there's a kiyum in standing for a hakel. Now, what does that show? That he, like the Aruch LaNer, thinks you might not be chayiv to stand in Talmud Torah now, but it's valuable. Now, it could be he's limiting it to hakel, because hakel, like Shavuos, but in a much more intense form, is, as the Rambam notes, a recreation of Har Sinai. Right, so it could be that it depends on the context. If you look at number 9, the Choshuke Chemed, that's Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, modern posek, also deals with this. And he notes that Reb Chaim Volozhin used to stand while he learned Torah from the Gra. So he says, "B'hagdamat b'nei Rabbeinu Hagra l'Shulchan Aruch." In the Gra's son wrote in his Hagdam Shulchan Aruch, he says, "Kadval Talmido Hagrach mi Volozhin sheba la'amod lifanav l'shmo mipiv divrei Elokim chayim. V'chein k'meduman shamati shebachan Wasserman Hashem yikom damo omek shibel Torah miravo Chavetz Chaim. Ma mikoram shel advarim." He heard that Reb Chaim Volozhin used to stand when he learned from the Gra, and Reb Chaim Wasserman when he learned from the Chavetz Chaim. So why? So he quotes everything we just saw. He quotes the Aruch LaNer, and he makes the exact diuk that I made. He says, "V'im kain zeu kavanet Shmuel shomer l'Ramana she'ela shani shomim chayinu b'chal kasher dimyushav el b'chal tuchal lashiv li v'chein tashiv miyad." So what is right? And then he quotes the Chida, right? The Ben Ish Chai, etc. And he says here, V'ulai zohi gam haita hanhakat Rabbeinu Chaim miVolozhin. V'ulai gam Rabbeinu Elchanan Hashem Yikom Dama. But he said it could be that they, like the Chidah, or like the Aruch LaNer, thought that there was value to standing because it recreated that Sinai experience. So what I think you see already, just from this little phrase, right, don't sit on your feet, emerges a whole perush from the Aruch LaNer, who thinks that whenever you learn, there's a value of partaking in that Har Sinai, or the Chidah, that at least at key moments, Shavuos, Har Sinai, Hoshana Rabbah, there's a certain type of limud that mimics Matan Torah. The son of the Balatanya said his father always used to, and that's what gave his limud that koach, that he could learn Shas Be'iyun 16 times by the time he was 30. I give you all a bracha. Like I said, I missed my chance. But all of you didn't miss your chance. You're not even close to 30. You got plenty of time to learn all of Shas Be'iyun 16 times. Just get started now. Darius, that's your next bid for an aliyah on Simchas Torah. Okay. So the truth is that there is another halachic implication of this, and that appears based on this Yerushalmi over here. Yerushalmi in 11 here says, "Amdu shnein Hashem asher lahem ariv, ainli omdin ela nidonin." So we know that people who come to court have to stand up. Shoel halachot agadot minayin, Talmud lomar amdu ve'amdu. How do you know that even people who ask a shaila in halacha or even agada have to stand? So they make a gzera shaveh to psak, to dinim, to amdu. And Tosafot actually quotes this Yerushalmi in 12. And then if you go to Shulchan Aruch, you say that ein shoalin me'umad ve'ein me'yishivin me'umad. So Shulchan Aruch says you don't have to ask standing, but then the Ramah says v'yesh omrim k'shesholim halacha dvar halacha tzarach lamod. Some people say that when you ask a shaila, you do need to stand. Tosafot based on the Yerushalmi. So the Shach says in 14 that the Ramah gets it from Tosafot. V'tzarach iyun that total lokatz v'shem ela a'uvda deritzadok damar gamliel da shosha yishal amar hashol v'shal v'katva Tosafos etc. V'hainu vada midina kover d'churban abayit shumen gamliel kodem churban abayit haya. He said, wait a second. Tosafot is quoting a story from before the time of Rabbi Gamliel. But how could the Ramah quote this halacha? We know that before the time of Rabbi Gamliel, people stood in Talmud Torah, but how can you quote this lamaisa nowadays? Right, and then he quotes the Rambam that Rishon haya Rav Yosef v'talmidim omdim mikodam achurban ba'itsheni nagu akol olamid latamim v'hem yoshvim. Right, that the teachers would sit and the talmidim would stand. But that was before, right? That was before, based on the Gemara in Megillah. And therefore, he just ends with V'tzarach iyun. So I don't understand. Meaning, it's one thing to say this happened back then, but the Ramah, right? So if you thought it was random halacha, the Ramah brings a day that when you ask a shaila, at least when you ask a shaila, you should stand. And the Shach says, Kanir'eh, this derives from the Gemara in Megillah. So therefore, his kasha is, but we don't paskin that way anymore. That was only before Rabbi Gamliel. But it could be that the Ramah understood Tosafot that no, like we were saying in the Aruch LaNer, that maybe there's some remnant of that value even nowadays. And for the Ramah, it might be that the value, the Ke'ein Matan Torah of Talmud Torah, is when you ask a halachic shaila. That's when you're partaking of that experience of Kabbalah Satorah. Right? Ber Heitev says the exact same thing. The Gra as well. Divrei Rav tzarach iyun. But then he says, V'divrei shach tmuin. Shekadav shalach Rabbi Gamliel hu. Akati, ma'in shoalin. Right, so he says it could be that this just argued on the Tosefta. So now if you, right, I basically just put the psakim here. The Yad David says, I think the Shacht is wrong. He says, I don't think the Tosfos thought this was after before the Churban. I thought he thought it was after. There was so and then he brings a whole proof of when exactly this happened, and the whole story of Elazar and Azariah, etc. And therefore he thinks that maybe, in fact, Tosfos really meant it Lemaisa, right? At least for asking Shailas. If you look at the Yad Avram, he says, "B'sefer Karban Nisan El Sham Miyashit Kotzer Shach Al Haga." The Hadidan Besodim Mishamei Rabbi Gamliel Bata Torah Kavod Torah Rabbi Gamliel Zaken. V'chein Hadar Rabbi Gamliel Yamud Rabbi Gamliel Lo Yolom Nelamudam Rabbi Gamliel Zaken. Maybe that's Rabbi Gamliel Zaken. V'ovda Deritzad Rabbi Gamliel Sha'amar Hashol Elachar Shemei Rabbi Gamliel V'ben Minosh Rabbi Gamliel Zaken. Maybe, right, the problem is there's more than one Rabbi Gamliel, and maybe Tosa really thought that this story happened after the bittul of the Takana of Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken, which shows you, like the Ramah, that if the story happened after Rabbi Gamliel, and Tosfot is quoting it, that even after Rabbi Gamliel, there are certain types of acts of Talmud Torah for the Ramah. It's asking a Shaila where you're still supposed to spend. And therefore he says, maybe what the Ramah thinks is that, yeah, they would learn Torah sitting. But nevertheless, when they asked a Shaila, they stood. The Shaper Yesh Rayak Sholin Varalach Lamad Afiz Manazev Vizem Muchrach. He thinks that's right. V'shuv Matzaj Ken Yos Bal Yad Aaron. He quotes it in the Yad Aaron. B'kei Shmuel. Sorry, Aval Ein Zemruch. He says not prove it, not necessarily, right? And then he goes back and he says no, maybe historically it's not true. So then we wouldn't have to do it. So he goes back and forth. But what he does, even though he seems to reject it in the end, he says maybe that's what the Ramah thinks, right? That the Ramah thinks that even though you don't have to stand learning up, when you ask a Shaila, you should. The Beit Hillel goes farther and actually paskins like the paskins that way, and he says, "Umini Yerushalmi," last line in 19, "Muchach v'hedyadah shoel tzarich lamod v'chei noagin." Right, the Beit Hillel is one of the Perushim on Shulchan Aruch. Not only does he say this in theory in the Ramah, but he says in his wherever he lived, right, that was actually the minhag. That when people asked shailas, they stood. If you look in the Birkei Yosef, again, he quotes, he goes through the whole history. What are we talking about? What generation? Etc.
That are we saying that, like, when you ask the Shaila, like, any question for learning, or, like, you bring up a topic that is wrong?
It seems like a halachic Shaila. That seems to be what the Ramah is saying. I'm not saying this is halacha, but I'm telling you that there were clearly the Ramah, and according to certain achronim, we actually paskin this way. Right? The Beis Hillel thinks that not only did the Ramah say it, we paskin this way. The Shach thinks we don't. I think the minhag is more like the Shach. Right? I don't know many people who dafka stand, though I could be wrong. But it's not just random. It's not just, the Beit Hillel. Look, the Aruch HaShulchan is pretty standard, right? Right? The Beit Hillel, okay, maybe a little bit less known. The Aruch HaShulchan is like one of the classic, 20th century summaries. Va'ani Omer Shim Kol Zed Divrei Rabbeinu Ramah Tzodkim. He says, I think the Ramah's right. Dinihidu Shalmi Pliga Matosefta Mikom Okum Given the Amachashalanu V'Chorot before the Amar Hashol V'Shalom Mila Ad Chilak Tosefta. He said, just like the Gra. He said, the Gemara quotes this story, so sure there's a Tosefta that says not that way, but we don't pass it this way. And therefore he says, Elavadai, Dishnein Yanimim, Devadai, Shekol Shoel Davar Meiza Chacham, Hein Sheilu Maisa, Hein Dvar Alacha, Hein Devar Agada, Tzarech Lamod B'Bnei Derech Eretz. It's respectful that when you ask a Shaila, you have to stand. Again, I think that the simple mashmaos of the Gemara is that if it's really from the Gemara, and if it's an independent halacha, it might be about kavod. But according to the Shach and the Beit Hillel, for sure, it's not about derech eretz. Right? According to Beit Hillel, this is a holdover from the Gemara in Megillah. That you're mimicking Matan Torah. And then the Aruch HaShulchan therefore says he thinks that it's true, Lemaisa, that if you have a shaila, you should stand. Unless it's a very complicated thing and it'll take a long time, so then you sit and deal with it. Mikol makom divrei Rabbeinu Rama yesh lahem panim lahalacha. Right? What the Rama is saying is lahalacha, and etc. Right? So he said if it's a very involved shaila that is going to take a while, so fine. So you could sit down. But he fundamentally thinks the Rama is right. And if you look at Rabbi Yashiv, right? Rabbi Yashiv, writing, late 20th, early 21st century, he quotes this as well in the Shach. And he says, "V'divrei hashach l'chora einam mechrachim." I don't think he's definitely right. But he notes, "Umikol makom niravada de'einam minhag lamod." But he says the minhag seems not to be that way. So you have the Beit Hillel saying the minhag was like that. The Aruch HaShulchan, 20th century, saying you should stand for a shayla. The Shach saying you shouldn't. Rabbi Yashiv saying it seems that the minhag is not to. But what I wanted to show you through this is that, right, the Gemara in Megillah tells you that they used to stand, just like Moshe, until Rabbi Gamliel, and then they stopped. But because of a simple comment in the Gemara that comes up, this phrase, "Don't sit down until you teach me Torah," emerges this whole literature that maybe it's not that value was rejected entirely, but it was just mitigated. You don't have to do it, but there's still a value, and therefore you have the Aruch HaNer who says certain times he would say, right, it's easy, it's better for you to stand. The Birkei Yosef saying, no, he's saying your Torah is like the old ones, and that's why I want you to stand. But saying, quoting from the Chidah, that certain types of Torah is experiential in that way, and you should stand. You have Shulchan Aruch Harab's story and Reb Chaim of Volozhin and Reb Chanan Wasserman, who apparently did stand when they learned Torah, or at least when they learned Torah from their Rebbeim. In the Yosef Dan, he said maybe it was only communal learning of Torah, and he said even if you don't stand nowadays, you should sit with respect, because that notion, the Talmud Torah, is about partaking, about from Har Sinai. It may be that no longer are we capable of standing for hours on end, but the value is there, and therefore even when you sit, you should sit with an element of kavod to recreate that experience, that mindset, that I don't know, whatever, that your posture should be one of Matan Torah. And then you have this whole other sugya that, according to some, it seems to be just a halacha on asking shaylas. But according to Beit Hillel, as he understands the Ramah, who paskins la halacha. Right? Again, this comes down to a bit of a historical question, which is the story that Tosfot is quoting, where they stood when they asked the shayla, is that pre or post Rabban Gamliel? It depends on which Rabban Gamliel are you talking about, right? The Rabban Gamliel Hazaken, or the second Rabban Gamliel. But whichever way you take it, you have major achronim. The Beit Hillel claiming that we paskin lahalacha, this is the minhag like the Ramah, that you have to stand when you ask a shayla, and his reasoning is because, at least when you ask a shayla, it's a throwback to the pre-Rabban Gamliel world, which, as we saw, is a throwback to Moshe Rabbeinu, right? To the way halacha was given from Hashem to Moshe at Sinai. And you have the Aruch HaShulchan saying, at least for derech eretz reasons, he thought that should be true. The Shach rejects it, right? And Rabbi Yashiv said the minhag is not that way. So I'm not telling you the halacha you should do it, right? I'm just saying that what you see is that it's not nidche, right? Many of the achronim, and maybe even the Ramah, right? The Ramah thinks that this value, what you get from these few little phrases, is that Agadah in Megillah that tells you they used to stand just like Moshe, which you think the value is gone, it's not true. That there are hints to the fact that element, that type of Talmud Torah, which mirrors Matan Torah, might be true even the Maisa. Whether that means that there's a value to standing while you're learning, or that at certain times of the year you should do it, or even that when you sit, you should sit with a certain dignity, as if you were receiving the Torah, or at least when you're asking a shaila, you should stand. Right? All those point in the direction that these Mefarshim, these Achronim, really do think that there seems to be a continuing value to standing while you're learning, or at least partaking of Matan Torah, based on that Gemara and Megillah, and the hints that they find in this phrase of Lo Tetev Akarech in Makor and in Menachot, which is how we got into this discussion. I will note that if you want a very extensive discussion on this, Gewalt, honestly, you think, what is going on? What is going on? Honestly, the things that Zoom brings us to do. Anyways, I will note that there is a very long discussion of this in two places. One is in a sefer which I had never seen before called the Knei Chachma, which is on Otzar Chachma if you want to see extended discussions of the halachas of this. And the other is in the Parshat Drachim, which I copied here. As you can see, it's quite long. Parshat Drachim, Drush Tetvav. I'm not going to read through all of it. I hear you saying hi. Okay. But I want to just read some of the points from the Parshat Drachim. So he writes, here. So he says he wants to talk a little bit about this standing versus sitting for hard versus easy learning. So he says, "Hine chiluk zeh derachot dekashos hu'mesechas Megillah. Shehikshu kazav echad omer ve'eshev behem kazav echad omer manochi amati bahar v'shani rav arachos moved kashos miyushav." And he says that the Ran says that Eira Ha'Eire would teach the Rabban on the floor. Ma'aseh chogan Eira Ha'Eire im daven hainu bekashos. And that was hard learning. Right, and then he quotes all these stories in the Gemara that even pre-Rabban Gamliel, they'd be sitting on the floor on pillows. He said that must be they were learning hard learning. And then he says, and this is what I wanted to show you, right? That he says, well, what's the counterbalance, right? Why is it that for hard learning people sat down, and why is it that nowadays it's justified to sit? I would add, why is it justified nowadays to sit down? So he said, because, it might be true everything we said until now, that there's a value to mimicking that Matan Torah aspect of Talmud Torah, but I think what the Gemara is balancing it with is pragmatism, right? Which is, but if your learning isn't going to be effective, then obviously it's nice to talk about these values, but that comes first. And I think that's what he's getting at. He says, right? That when they thought that they couldn't concentrate, so that's when they would sit. They would sit on cushions. And the raya he brings is from the standing versus sitting. The bishmos kashos and Moshe Yosef Hetev. And he says, and where did you learn that pragmatism is a relevant factor? Maybe you'd say, no, Talmud Torah is only an experience, so you should stand. And if that means that your learning is less effective, fine, who cares? In the end of the day, the experience will be Matan Torah like. Who did they learn it from? From Moshe, according to that Gemara. That even Moshe, he was talking to God, remember? And the Gemara says, but when it got too hard, when he needed to sit and concentrate, he was allowed to sit even on Har Sinai itself, right? Which shows you that this sort of balance is inherent in the Gemara and Megillah, according to the Gemara and Megillah, even in right the original learning, so to speak, on Har Sinai from God. Right, and then he goes through a lot, and you can go through it. He goes through, is the reason that you stand and sit, is it because of the Rebbe would stand in the student would sit in the Talmidim would stand to show kavod? He goes through a lot of different issues, right? And then he says, what does it mean that? What if they're both sitting? Right? Maybe there's an ideally they shouldn't be sitting in the same way. Right? One should be al karka, one should be al karmuksasos. Like I said, if you want to see a lot more of these the aspects how these play out, then you are invited to look at length in the you can see, right? It just keeps going, and going and going and going and going and going and going, and there we go, right? But okay, just to summarize what we've seen. So again, the reason I wanted to do this, I got it to, like I said before, Shavuos, is because what you see is that basically what all these Achronim are getting at is that everything from the fact that there are some people who still stand when they're learning, or stand at least when they're asking a shayla, or stood on Shavuos night, or there's a value of standing but you don't have to. All of those shitot say that our Talmud Torah isn't just learning, it's a recreation of Har Sinai. And then what we saw is also several Mefarshim who said either this still applies and you should stand for certain learning to mimic that experience, or we saw several expressions of the fact that maybe the fact that we sit is also affected by this idea. So we saw the Yosef Dat who says even when you sit, you should have a little bit of dignity with how you sit because your Talmud Torah partakes of it. So even if you're sitting because you're weak, and we're all weak since the time of Rabbi Gamliel, so fine, but you should sit with a certain dignity, just like they used to stand. And then those few lines that I showed you from the Parashat Drachim, that maybe the fact that we sit because it's hard for us to stand is itself, in a certain sense, partaking of the Talmud Torah and Har Sinai, because as the Gemara in Megillah has it, even Moshe Rabbeinu, when things were hard, would sit down. And therefore, the fact that Lemaisa, we might not possibly have to stand, doesn't change the fact that these Agadatot are supposed to shape the way we experience Talmud Torah. That we're not only supposed to view Talmud Torah as, intellectual or whatever, right? It's also a moment of revelation, as it were, just like the original Har Sinai. So you can either come out of it and say, you know what, from now on, when I ask a Shaila, I think like the Ramah, like the Aruch HaShulchan, I'm going to stand. Or if I can, I'll stand learning or something. You could do that if you want. I don't think you have to at all. But to recognize that even when we sit, what the Gemara is getting at is that Talmud Torah historically was actually tried to mimic Matan Torah, and that tells us something about what exactly we're trying to accomplish when we learn. That it's not just learning, but it's also mimicking the experience. That's at least something we should take with us going into Shavuos, that double element, right? That all of Talmud Torah is not just learning, but is Kabbalah Satorah, is a mimicking of that original shear from God to Moshe Rabbeinu. So again, I think that at least that Agadic idea, whether you take it for an expression l'maisa or not, whether you buy any of these halachic conclusions or not, or you just say like Rabbi Yashiv, look, that's not the minhag, that's not what we do, right? We pass it against the Rama. What do you want from me? Which is also totally legitimate. I think he's right. The minhag isn't that. That doesn't mean that the theological point that the Gemara is making in these Agadatot should be lost on us, right? That Talmud Torah isn't just about imbibing information. It's about revelation. It's about experience some sort of interaction with God, just like Moshe. And that's why we either mimic Moshe or we have to justify why we don't. So that's what my thoughts on this. Yeah. Yeah, Joel, go.
So let's say you had a question, right? And you have a thermo, but your rabbi was sitting. Would you stand?
Yeah, you would, because, right, so that's more in the Parshas Drachim. When Parshas Drachim goes through, if you're interested in it, some of the different stages that are evident through the Gemara and the Rishonim of how Rebbeim would sit and Talmidim would stand, or Rebbeim would sit one place and Talmidim would sit another place, right? It does seem to be that this is a din in the Talmud, right? And that's where you saw from Chai Volozhin also, right? It sounded like the Gra was sitting, but he would stand. Or the Chavetz Chaim would sit and Rochana Wasserman would stand, right? It's something about not just learning, but about, and I think if I had to guess what they're thinking conceptually, the Rochana Wasserman and Rochana Volozhin, is that what type of Talmud Torah mimics Matan Torah. It's not just learning by yourself. It's when you're makabel from a Rav, right? It's Kabbalah from a, right? Just like when Moshe was being makabel, that type of Talmud Torah mimics Matan Torah in a way that your personal limud might not, right? I think that's probably how they're conceptualizing it and why they seem not to have stood whenever they learned, but only when they got the Torah from their Rebbeim, right? I assume that that's also, at least as the Beis Hillel understands it, what's behind the Ramah, right? That if you ask a Shaila, right, if you think about it, right, how does Moshe describe his relationship with the Jewish people? Right, this is probably a good thing to say again before Shavuos. How does he describe it in the as we're going into Matan Torah? How does he describe it? No? Okay, I'll share with you a screen. Gewalt. Guys, come on. When Yitro says to him, "Why are you?" Right? What screen do you see right now? You see my Bar Ilan?
Yeah, Yitro.
Yeah, okay. So when Yitro says to Moshe, "What are you doing?" Right? Vayarchotein Moshe et kol asher oseh la'am vayomer ma davar hazeh asher ata oseh la'am madu ata yoshev levatecha l'chol am nitzav alecha min boker ha'arav. Why are you doing this? And everybody is standing by you from morning till night. And what does he say? Vayomer Moshe l'chot no ki yavo elai ha'am lidrosh Elohim, because they're coming to seek out God. And how are they seeking out God? They're asking me shaylas. Ki yelahem davar boy lai v'shafati ben ishu ben re'eu v'odati et chukei Elohim v'torozav. So it seems like, right, even that Moshe, right, specifically asking a shayla, Moshe conceptualizes as doresh Elohim, as asking of God, right? And I assume that's really what's in the background here of the Beis Hillel's interpretation of the Ramah, that there's something about asking a shayla that partakes of that Sinai experience of getting the Torah from God in a way that maybe regular limud doesn't. That's my guess. Okay? So, but like I said, the point of this is not to Lamaisa tell you should stand when you ask a shayla, Again, I think Rabbi Yasha is probably right. That's not the minhag, and who am I to go against the minhag? But what I do think is that to at least inculcate in ourselves that Talmud Torah is more than just learning, right? There is this tapping into a revelation, right? And that's somehow supposed to affect the way we feel and the way we experience Talmud Torah. I think that we should take with us going into Shavuos, based on the Agadot. That's what I think. Again, I'm not giving you practical implications. I don't plan on. I mean, I usually stand. If you've noticed, I stand a lot. If you were wondering if that's because I think it's a halachic value, it's not. It's because it's better for my back. That's it's one of those things you really need to avoid if you're in a job that would normally have you sitting a lot. There's a reason rabbis are often hunched. You spend your whole time learning over a book for your whole life. So by the time you're 80, so I stand a lot. There was a time in Toronto where basically I would sit and be by my computer and learning, and my back started killing me, so I started standing a lot and using standing desks and stuff like that. So it's not halachic, but I could justify it. I could always pretend. It's one of those things when you have a few crazy chumrot, so then everyone starts believing that you have other crazy chumrot. If I wanted to, I could tell everybody, I stand as much as I can during learning because I think like the Aruch LaNer, and that there's still a value, that it's only b'diavad that we sit since the time of Rabbi Gamliel. And there would be people who would believe me. It's just not true. But whatever. It's always something to have in your back pocket. That if someone says, "Oh, why do you stand?" Because I'm very machmir. I'm very machmir. This is what I think. Okay, whatever. But it's not true. I do have crazy chumras. That's just not one of them. Okay. Anyways, so that's some pre-Shavuos Torah, and I got it. We'll see what we do next week.
What is the you feel particularly crazy?
That I'm going to say in recording. No. What chumras I actually have, I don't know if I'll say it in recording. What chumras I don't have, that's fine.
I'm recording.
I don't think that's crazy. I do watch my Machron. I don't think that's crazy, right? Shulchan Aruch says my Machron Chova. So I'm not makil, like the Bali Tosfot, lechatchila.
I just still remember that story you were telling us when your kids were like.
Oh yeah, okay, Nachanami. Look, I have weird chumras, I have weird shitos. It happens, right? You know that I have chumros in Eruvin, as do you, Yosef.
Yes.
Hey, look, if I can convince your great uncle that my Eruv is good and that you can carry in it, then I'm holding by my chumrah and Eruvin credentials here. Whatever, I have weird shitos, I have weird chumras, whatever, right? Look, we all know, Ora teaches my kids what brachot to make because, I don't really want my kids maybe one day once I explain them the sugya, I don't want them doing what I do and making ha'etz on chocolate. It's weird. I think it's right? And that's what I do it. But
Yeah, I can see that.
yes, I do make ha'etz on chocolate. Yosef, do you make ha'etz on juice?
I'll say I don't, but
Because your wait, grandfather or great grandfather? I always forget. How's Ravan Salvage? Your great grandfather? Yeah. So he paskin that orange. You make a ha'etz on orange juice.
Yeah.
Like the Chazon Ish. So I do that too, but that I think is less crazy.
Honestly, that makes more sense.
I got very little like in the Torah. It's like
No, so that I do. That I do. I also do that. Juice, I'll also do it. Like that type of juice for sure.
Why wouldn't you say ha'etz anyway?
It's subject to a. So it's an interesting sugya, meaning the Gemara, and I don't really need to include this on the recording, though maybe people want to hear.